Good evening, everyone. My name is Corky. I'm with Yolo Basin Foundation, and we're very excited this evening to be offering Flyway Nights, focusing on the burrowing owl. You will notice some editing in this recording because we did have some internet issues on the night of the actual presentation. Tonight's topic is going to be, again, about the Western burrowing owls, some of the cool things about this particular species, but also, sadly, some of the conservation efforts that failed that led to now consideration for increase in its listing. Next month, we're going to be hearing about another predator, the river otter. So sharks, pelicans, and ladybugs? River otters, the little predators that could, and that will be with Megan Isidore from the River Otter Ecology Project. Just to let you know what else is coming up. So again, in February, we will be learning about the river otters. In March, we're going to hear from one of our own volunteers, Mike Davis, and he is going to be presenting on some of the wildlife spectacles that you might run into when you're out touring around in the Yolo Bypass wildlife area. And finally, in April, we will hear from our wildlife area manager, Garrett Spann, to give us the updates of what is going on out there. So I will now be turning over the recording to Catherine Portman so she can share with us about these amazing little burrowing owls.
Yeah. Good evening, all you wonderful wildlife enthusiasts. My name is Catherine Portman. I'm the CEO of the Burrowing Owl Preservation Society. Pam Nyberg and I co-founded the organization in 2003. Some of our directors here, Sandra Menzel is an avian ecologist, and Roxanne Moger is a certified California naturalist, and one of our board members who is not there for the picture is Rebecca Cull. So this is our species, our critter, Athene canicularia. I imagine all of you are familiar with what this bird looks like and what it does. It's crepuscular, active during dusk and dawn. There are two subspecies in the anyway, Athene canicularia hypogea is the one that we have here in California, and there's another in Florida called Athene canicularia floridana. One day, a reporter from the New York Times telephoned me, and she was asking me about basketball. And I was like, but what basketball? I don't know anything about basketball. And so then I said, you got the wrong number. So then a few months later, I was at Duck Days, and this big hairy burly guy starts walking over to my table, and I'm thinking, oh, I've seen this kind of character before. He's going to come over and say to me, I like burrowing owls with salsa. But no, he was really enthusiastic and warm and fuzzy because he's alum of the Florida Atlantic University, and the burrowing owl is their mascot. So apparently their basketball team had achieved some heights in the whatever competition is for basketball. And so then I understood why the New York Times reporter was calling me about basketball. So this is the habitat that burrowing owls like. Grassland used to be thousands of acres of California native prairie and herds of tule elk, keeping the vegetation short, which is what burrowing owls prefer and like. This is also in western Yolo County, facing the Blue Ridge, and this is the kind of habitat. This was occupied breeding habitat. Whenever you say anything about burrowing owls, there's always an exception. So most burrowing owl devotees will tell you that you will not find a burrowing owl within 30 feet of a tree. So, but at Wild Horse Golf Course, here they bred successfully underneath a 20-foot walnut tree. Sometimes you see a variation in the color, and that has to do with the male doing his job, standing outside in the sun, getting bleached, and so he's blonde and chocolate, and then the chocolate is the female who spends more time underground in the burrow with the eggs and with the young. So what does it eat? It's an opportunistic feeder. This is a picture from Florida where the folks down there tell me that they eat turtles and snakes and frogs. In our neighborhood, they're more on bugs. So grasshoppers, crickets, moths, mice, of course, and western fence lizards. This one was dormant that we found when we were cleaning out a burrow. We put them back. Burrowing owls are dependent for survival on having a burrow to shelter from extreme weather and also to evade predators. So the California ground squirrel is usually they use the abandoned ground squirrel burrows. In Canada, they'll use badger burrows, or and I've seen them use two tires stacked up against each other. So here's a burrow, and you don't see an owl, but you can tell that it's occupied because it has what we call signs. So that's whitewash, feathers, and pellets. The thing I really like about burrowing owls is that they like to have fun. They like to go to the beach. They like to play hide and seek. Sometimes they pick really good hiding places. Sometimes they don't. They like ballet. This is Michael Forsberg's fabulous photograph that he took in Nebraska. They are sports enthusiasts. They like to attend sporting events. They like golf. They like to go on a cruise. Captain Porter wrote in his ship log that burrowing owls came on his ship when he was 17 miles out the Golden Gate Bridge. He felt like it was so foggy, he thought maybe that they didn't know where they were or which way to go. And they stayed on board eating insects that came around the lights, and they left the barge when they got back to Hunter's Point. Burrowing owls like to do aerial acrobatics. They like to do imitations. I think this one is supposed to be a desert tortoise. And they like to look intimidating. They're also very artistic. They do art projects. They do burrow decorations. This was at Wild Horse Golf Course. If you look closely, you can see that those are golf tees that the golfer puts their rest of their ball on. So they collected all those to decorate their burrow. They also like to, oops, I think this was supposed to be a private picture. So the Institute for Bird Populations did thank you, David DeSante, did 2 statewide burrowing owl census, and they divided California up into regions. And over here, Yolo County is in the mid-central valley, and down here, to take a note, is Imperial Valley, that at that time had 70% of California's population of burrowing owls. And that was the rationale in 2003 when the Fish and Game Commission denied the previous petition to list, because they said the owls had just all moved to the Imperial Valley. But there was no banding evidence. The banders' re-encounters of the owls didn't demonstrate that that was the case. So the population decline we have known for a long time. So the first Institute for Bird Population census in the early 1990s, and then again in 2006 and 2007, we participated in both of those. So they noted, they divide up California into these 5 by 5 kilometer blocks. Yolo County has like 130 5 by 5 kilometer blocks. And so you can't survey them all. So what they do is they survey a few, and then they do a calculation to come up with the best estimate. So we had an 8% decline from the early 1990s to the 06-07 survey. And in Yolo County, so this was an estimate, but the actual detections, so this is the 2007 pairs, detected pairs, were 62, and only 20 blocks were surveyed. In 2014, we surveyed just Yolo County. So I contacted the Institute for Bird Populations, and I said, around 2012, 2013, I said, let's do another statewide survey. They said, we don't have the money. And I said, well, if I get the money, would you do just Yolo County with me? And they said, yes. So so we surveyed in 2014, we surveyed 45 blocks, and owls were detected in only 6 of those 45 blocks. So there's a comparison on the bottom in the blue. The 2007 detection in 20 blocks was 62, and in 2014 it had dropped to only 15 detections. And our surveyors, about a quarter of our surveyors were actually wildlife professionals. That's just another. So then after that, we decided in 2023 to do just a targeted survey. So we surveyed the 6 blocks that had detections back in 2014. And we also did an analysis of the iNaturalist database and the eBird database. And we also interviewed some people, some professionals who have frequent contacts and going around the county to if they had seen any burrowing owls. And what we found, this number is wrong here, what we found was 7 individuals on that targeted survey in Yolo County. So the Yolo County population, this just shows a little bit of the trend. These are Brenda Johnson and John McNerney's employee of the City of Davis natural resource specialist. And these are their estimates in those years of what they thought was the population of Yolo County. And in 2014, we did our comprehensive Yolo County survey of 15 pairs. So this handwriting was on the wall because Brenda Johnson did this study that was published in the Raptor Research Reports in 1997. She started on campus with 44 owls in 1981. She had a formula that would supposed to predict what time period the burrowing owls would become extinct. And it said the prediction was 20 years, but in half that time, in 10 years, she had 1 owl left, so reproductive extinction in 10 years. Also, another study with Zach Smith and Chris Sturmer studied some reproduction at Wild Horse Golf Course and then the agriculture buffer and the Yolo bypass. And they had these significant declines in 1 year from 07 to 08. And then subsequent anecdotal reports from local birders and from 2012 to 14, that zero reproduction on Wild Horse Golf Course. So this is, I want to make a distinction between the golf course, this is the development, and this is the golf course proper. And then right along the edge here is what's called the agriculture buffer. That's 38 acres that belongs to the City of Davis. So I'm getting into the part of my talk now that is about the failed conservation efforts. And this is, in case you don't recognize it, so this is Pole Line Road, and this is East Cobell. So Jonathan Whitcomb published his 5-year surveys of burrowing owls in both Solano and Yolo counties, and I'm just going to pick out the Yolo County numbers from his data sets for those 5 years. So this is the northeast corner of the golf course, and that is the ag buffer, so the 38 acres that belongs to the city. So that when the golf course was built, it was the builder scraped the soil off the top of the 38-acre ag buffer to use for the contours and stuff of the golf course. And so that was, of course, a no-no. And so the city told the golf course builders, we have a legal challenge here. And so as a settlement, the golf course said that they would pay to have for revegetation, for restoration of the ag buffer that had been scraped dry. So I hired this botanist Chan, and he's a plant guy, right? So he just notices that there's 10 to 12 burrowing owls out there, and when he finishes his restoration plan in 2001, he notices that there's 20 or 25 owls. So it was kind of the perfect situation because the ground was totally denuded. There was no vegetation. And then when the city council gave the conditional permit, they said, leave some natural areas. And so what they left were walnut trees. And so who likes walnuts? Squirrels. And so it worked out great. So Jonathan Whitcomb's surveys, 5-year surveys, there were 7 in 2005. Jim Rose was an employee of the golf course, so he knew every square inch. In 2005, there were 7. Institute for Bird Populations, one of the blocks that was surveyed was actually the ag buffer. And there were 6 pair detected there. And then in 2014, when we did when BOPS did our comprehensive countywide, There were 3 pair there, and then after that, local birders reported only 1 on the ag buffer. Now, this is separate. This is the golf course. The golf course has always been very good to us. They allowed us to install artificial burrows, and as the squirrel population was going down. And they also, as a natural, regular course of their business, have to keep the vegetation down. So they're always mowing the grass. So here again on the golf course shows the decline of the population on the golf course. Vegetation height is critical. The burrowing owl needs short grass. So this is an owl that was on the ag buffer. And so I asked the city council, can we keep the vegetation down on the ag buffer? And they referred me to the Open Space Commission, where I went, and no, Mitch Sears told me that the ag buffer was never intended to be managed for single species. And so I said, okay, well, can I see the management plan? Well, so after about a year, it turned out there was none. There was no management plan. So the end result of years of advocating for burrowing owl habitat at the 38-acre ag buffer around Wild Horse Golf Course was that they agreed that they would manage 4.5 acres. So of a 38-acre property that had historic natal burrows, we ended up with 4.5 acres. This is, I can't see how they use the pointer thing here. Can I move this? Oh, okay. So this is Davis, the city of Davis. Around here, this is Covell Road. The people here call it the Mace Curve. And then out here, so this is some agriculture field, and out here on 104 becomes 30B. So there was whoops. So there was out here, there's a ranch called the Leland Ranch. The property owners, the citizens of Davis, voted to tax themselves for the city to buy open space, so that they would have around their town open space. So this was a property that the Yolo Land Trust and the city got a conservation easement on this piece of property. And I read the deed, said they were, had wildlife values, and it had scenic vista values. And so what was allowed on this property was an orchard, which has no wildlife value, and buildings, like 5 buildings. 2 of them are 2 stories high. So no scenic vista there. You can't see over the top of those now. And of course, the people live there, and so they want to, they have pet, so they walk the dog. It's outside the city limits, so there's no dog leash law applicable there. So I watch the woman walk the dog all the way down here and stick its nose in every single burrow that was there. Then, so that was a conservation easement. So then also in the same location, there's a proposal on this Mace Ranch Innovation Center. The city accepted a project proposal that has changed. The name has changed several times now. But the city also, with the Citizens Measure O money, bought 25 acres there, which hosted a pair of burrowing owls. So we advocated with the city that they keep the vegetation short, and that we would do it. It wouldn't cost the city anything, and that could we install some artificial burrows there and keep the 25 acres for burrowing owl habitat. It was assumed that because this project proposal was going forward, that the city was just going to sell the 25 acres, so the citizens intended to be open space. So along this ditch, what vegetation was tall, and I said, hey, wait a minute. The county has easements on both sides of this road. So I asked them if they would cut the vegetation, and they said, sure. So they came out and cut the vegetation. And then shortly after that, the city phoned the county and said, please don't cut the grass anymore. After that, we got an email from Tracy Reynolds at the Open Space Commission with the notice that the city manager and someone else had decided that the city was not going to do anything to encourage burrowing owls. So we called that the Allow No Owl City of Davis policy. So there are different magnitudes, threat levels, incidental and population level. At the incidental, there's collisions. All the dead owls I have found were car crashes. They also run into windows. There's pets, the cats and the dogs will kill them. So on the roads, the people somehow on the county roads, people just drive really fast. So one of the things that you can do is when you're on the county roads to drive slowly, look for wildlife. And if you do happen to hit a raptor or see a raptor, if you could safely, check and see if you can take it to the California Raptor Center. It's a good rehabilitation facility, and they might be able to get it back out into the wild. So the population level threats are habitat loss, of course, and that's the same for every critter. Also, the California Environmental Quality Act, CEQA, and the California Department of Fish and Wildlife are population level threats for burrowing owls. So people like to change the land use, and so we like shopping malls, and municipalities like to collect the sales taxes. So when this pair of owls came back to their the only thing they could find that looked like a burrow was this fallen down for sale sign. And we have a big, fortunately, alternate energy push. My friend Sean Smallwood has done a lot of work out at the Altamont to document the raptor mortalities, and burrowing owls are the greatest among them. So so you would think that when you're doing wildlife conservation, the hardest thing to do would be to get the land, right? But here in the city of Davis and surrounds, we have these several examples where we had the land, it was public land, but it wasn't managed or it was mismanaged. And so the burrowing owls are gone. So here, this road here is Mace. You keep going south on Mace and you come to the grasslands, Yolo County Grasslands Park. And this purple place is the 63, it was mitigation land for the burrowing owls that were disced into the ground. They're juveniles before they could fly. They were disced into the ground at Mace Ranch for the housing development. So that's how this 63 acres came to be the burrowing owl reserve. So this part right here, this green part, is where there's a organization called SOAR. It's a Sacramento. It's an organization of model plane radio or I don't know how they fly these planes, but anyway, they're model planes that they fly. And so they would keep the grass for their sport. They would mow and keep the grass short. So someone reported that they thought it was bad that they were mowing. It was bad for the owls, and so it was reported to the county. So the county went to these burrows and they put up 4-foot stakes all around these burrows, and then they put the yellow crime scene tape around it. And so then the airplane people couldn't mow there anymore. So the vegetation got 4 feet high and the owls couldn't use that place. They moved on. So also in this reserve is the requirement, there's a habitat management plan that the city agreed to. They were the habitat managers. And so there was what's called an effective height standard. So it required this measurement of the vegetation in April and in July. So for a time period, an independent outside consultant was doing this monitoring. And this is a table of whether the standard was met. So the vegetation height was supposed to be 3 to 4 inches year round. Clearly says that in the habitat management document. So the independent manager, can't see my pointer. So you can look in April and see the standard was not met, 07, 08, not just over, not met. And then in the other years, 05, 06, all the way to 2011, in June, July, not met. So in the consultant's report, they give some discussion. And so in 2008, she writes that the height was 6 to 15 inches in some areas. Then she says, while it seems to be relatively small deviation from the standard, averaging the measurements masked the magnitude of the discrepancy. The vegetation heights 4 times the standard were measured along some of the transects, and the mean effective height for every one of the transects exceeded the compliance standard by 25%. From a burrowing owl's perspective, approximately half of the reserve was unsuitable habitat in the July survey. Then the following year in 2009, I'll just read this last part. The habitat conditions have varied widely during the 5 years of monitoring, but generally the effective vegetation height has never been met the standard identified in the management plan. So here we had 63 acres and we couldn't keep the vegetation down. So things were also happening in agriculture because there were some compatible agriculture practices that burrowing owls could still use and thrive in those areas with row crops. So what happened with these fields was that suddenly we discovered olives. And then the price of nuts went up, almonds and walnuts. And so, hundreds, thousands of acres of Yolo County have been planted in orchards and vineyards. So this piece of property became an olive orchard. So then, our practice, private property, you're the landowner, you want to build something. What do I need to do when I have burrowing owls on my property? So what happens? So this headline, owl lockout plan to make way for homes is what generally happens. So what happens is passive relocation, and it allows the developers to hire a biologist to install one-way doors in the burrow opening so that when the owl goes out, it cannot get back in. And then when it can't get back in, the burrow is destroyed, and it's supposed to be destroyed by hand, but it's usually not. So these are the doors. They use sometimes the dryer vents, and then so that it's clear, so the owl goes out. A qualified burrowing owl biologist went on one of these sites and saw that the biologist had installed the doors, the one-way doors, in the wrong direction. So the owls were trapped inside the burrow. They couldn't get out to forage. So this is the most recent staff report, CDFW staff report from 2012. And what happened with this passive relocation is that only part of it was adopted. So this Dr. Lynn Trulio, she did this study. She's done at San Jose State, and there was something they were building. I can't remember if it was a road or some runway or something. And so there was occupied burrowing owl burrow there. And so she said, well, let's see if they might move over. So she installed some artificial burrows about 100 meters away, and then they closed the burrow. And so indeed, the owls went to the artificial burrows. And so she called it passive relocation. Well, in the application of it was misapplied just to evict the owls from the burrow, not to supply an alternate burrow when they were evicted from their burrow. So like I said, it's supposed to provide an alternate burrow, but it hasn't happened. So from the CDFW staff report, it says loss of access to burrows will result in varying levels of increased stress, could depress reproduction, increase predation, increase energetic costs, introduce risks posed by having to find and compete for other burrows which are occupied, and that critter is going to defend its place. Also in the staff report, I'll just read the highlighted part. Because burrowing owls are dependent on burrows at all times of the year for survival and or reproduction, evicting them from nesting, roosting, and satellite burrows may lead to indirect impacts or take. This is from publication of the Proceedings of the Burrowing Owl Symposium. We have a lending library if anybody would like to borrow that volume. So these qualified burrowing owl biologists, Townsend and Lennon, they wrote, when using one-way doors for passive relocation, Fish and Game recommends replacement burrows are available on nearby or adjacent lands secured for long-term burrowing owl habitat. Replacement burrows are usually not provided, and the lands usually adjacent to those development projects are also privately owned, and they don't want burrowing owls on their property either. So these authors continue, furthermore, in our experience, post-eviction monitoring, such as banding or telemetry, to determine the fate of these owls is rarely implemented or required. Displaced birds unfamiliar with new areas are less likely to breed and are more susceptible to mortality from predators. Also in the proceedings, Pete Bloom, Jeff Kidd, we believe the continued endorsement of Fish and Game of passive relocation and its use as a preferred mitigation and conservation tool and its misapplication by biologists has accelerated the decline, is not known to have protected even one pair of nesting owls over the long term and has contributed to the species decline. Back to the original staff report, Burrowing Owl Mitigation Guidelines in 1995, we had to confirm that the site was occupied in order to get the recommended 6.5 acres of compensatory lands. So often what we would see is that the developers biologists would say we went out there and there's no burrowing owls there, when the neighbors who were using the property for recreation knew that there were owls there. So where would you get these mitigation lands? So developers could buy the 6.5 acres per owl or pair at mitigation banks. So Elsie Gridley Mitigation Bank is in Solano County, and it's next to Jepson Prairie. So it's kind of wet. It's like wetlands. So in Winters, there was a project, Winters Highlands Housing Development, where there were 103 acres of nesting occupied burrowing owl habitat. And that was the same case there. The developers biologists said, oh, no owls here. So anyway, we were able to get a focused EIR, and so owls were detected there. And so the developer chose to buy credits at Elsie Gridley Mitigation Bank. So I did a Public Records Act request and got the annual reports and also the bank establishment instrument, and found out that, so in the first annual report, the consultant said no specific criteria are established for burrowing owl or terrestrial wildlife. The primary intent of monitoring for these is to document presence or absence. And it said there were no nesting burrowing owls at Elsie Gridley. And so this is my request to them. Please provide documents showing that this monitoring plan had been reviewed, because fishing CDFW was one of the signatories of the bank enabling agreement, and they had an obligation to monitor what was going on there, and if things were not going right, to ask for a remediation plan. So I never got that documentation, and was able to get a meeting with CDFW, and the woman told me that no, she could not find any documentation that that the bank had been inspected before CDFW allowed them to sell burrowing owl credits. So for that 103 acres that we had in Winters that was occupied nesting habitat, we got 19.5 acres of fairy and tadpole shrimp. So these are the critical failures of CDFW. They told us, they came in 2005, they came to the California Burrowing Owl Consortium and asked the attendees there for help in developing a conservation plan, which never happened. And then the staff report required only 6.5 acres. So they admitted some years later that that was an inadequate amount of compensatory land to recover the species. And then this allowance of the passive relocation without requiring banding or monitoring, and they failed to monitor mitigation banks. So the California Environmental Quality Act so CEQA, the California Environmental Quality Act, the lead agency, whoever is the land use jurisdiction, the city council or the county board of supervisors, is supposed to assess the environmental impacts, including the biological impacts, and mitigate those impacts to less than significant.
It's unmuted.
They don't have to get an EIR. They can,
Somebody just said something about being muted. Go ahead, just go.
See if someone can hear me. So the lead agency could be, people elected to city council. It could be business interests or actors or golfers, people who have no experience with CEQA. And so they can determine, so what the lead agency does is determines the appropriate level of review. And so they can decide that an initial study with a mitigated negative declaration is the appropriate level of CEQA review. So the initial study is just, they just check boxes, they're little questions, and they check the box, and then they say it's a mitigated negative declaration, and they don't, or they could say, no, we think that a full EIR is to assess the real level of impacts is necessary for this project. So citizens in Lancaster County called us, and we determined that this builder group, Royal Investors, they were doing this project with a mitigated negative declaration. They were not sending their project proposals to the state clearinghouse, and that is where CDFW and other wildlife agencies, the trustee agencies, would have an opportunity to review these proposals and make recommendations on, what they thought about the projects. And so in this particular project, a biologist, same thing, made one visit and found no burrowing owls. The local neighbors sent me the picture of the project site with burrowing owls. So the only thing that happened to this developer after hundreds of acres of occupied burrowing owl habitat are lost is that the Deputy Attorney General notified the city that there's a CEQA requirement to send these projects through the clearinghouse to the trustees. This is the land that was in Winters, the 103 acres. So zooming in back to our local Davis situation. This is an example of the lead agency accepting an initial study mitigated negative declaration. So this is Mace Boulevard here. And this was a property that had the proposal for the Marriott Hotel. And this is we think this was a drainage that went underneath Mace over to Akita on the other side. So the mitigated negative direct can say that although the project could have significant effect on the environment, there won't be a significant effect in this case because the project has been modified, specifically that they've done some mitigations. They're saying there's some mitigations. The initial study indicates there will be no impact or less than significant impact to biological resources with this mitigation. And the mitigation could be that they're going to teach the construction workers to look on the ground for burrowing owls. So on this Marriott project, the city certified that a mitigated negative declaration initial study was the appropriate level of CEQA review when it has a special status species on the site. The city of Davis accepted eviction as a mitigation when CDFW clearly says it is a significant impact. It accepted a pre-construction survey as mitigation. A pre-construction survey is just somebody walking in front of the tractor. And it's often seems that the lead agencies don't realize that they can ask for more when they're certifying the CEQA level of review. And they can also ask for conditions of approval for the project, but they're also afraid that they're going to be sued by the developer. So what we got for the burrowing owls at the Marriott Hotel, the city refused to negotiate with us. We wanted them to, use their full authority under CEQA. We got a qualified biologist. We thought that there was only one pair, and it turned out when we got the qualified biologist that there were actually 3 pair on the site. We got phased grading so that there were burrows available on one side of the property, as the other side, the other burrows were being occluded in discs so that there were always burrows available. Well, during the land disturbance. We asked the developer to pay for the owls that were going to be evicted to be banded, and they banded Jeff Linzer. We couldn't find a bander. Jeff Linzer came all the way up here to help band the owls, and 15 owls were banded, and they didn't even catch them all. So the and then we also got the artificial burrows installed. So where are we on time? Do we want to stop here? 15 minutes if you want. Okay. So in a document in 2008 that came from Fish and Game called Guidance for Burrowing Owl Conservation, they wrote that the legal protections under CEQA do not substantially contribute to burrowing owl conservation because the lead agencies have broad discretion in identifying the impacts, whether they are significant or not. And even if they do ask for a full EIR survey for the assessment of environmental impacts, they can still, they only have to be mitigated to, quote, the extent feasible, and they can also just claim overriding consideration and do the project anyway. So all of this, sad story, there are things that you can do. What can I do? So for CEQA, you can contact your local government or whoever the lead agency is and ask to be notified when projects are proposed so that you can see and have an opportunity to look at the CEQA documents. And then you can write comment letters. It's nice if you can get an expert comment letter. And then you also will need to hire a lawyer. And so you have to have your comments letter in there to paper the record so that you have standing when you want to bring litigation. The petition you've probably heard, the petition to list, just the commission just voted to authorize candidacy for the burrowing owl, and that takes now CDFW will have take a year or a year and a half to do the study to determine if they are going to list or not. A petition was in 2003 listed. I mean, the petition was submitted back in 2003. Petitioners were Center for Biological Diversity and Santa Clara Valley Audubon and some others. But as I said, the Fish and Game Commission denied that petition. So now it's just maybe, I guess, October when the commission decided for candidacy. One of the functions of Fish and Game that does work is this Cal Tips. So something that you can do when you're out birding, if you see that there's a burrowing owl in immediate jeopardy, you can call this number. This has worked out almost always for us when we have phoned a warden comes out. So the things that you can do, you really have to participate in your government. It's overwhelming sometimes, I know, but so we need to slow human population growth. We need to concentrate the population centers. Often municipalities will do group sessions where they'll invite the public to come and, tell them, how do you want this land used? How do you want our community to look? Then we need more public grasslands. When public land comes, land comes into the public. So for example, a landowner donated some acreage to Yolo County a few years ago. And so they send out a survey and say, well, how do you, it's going to be public land. How do you want it to be used? People usually say, oh, we want trees and we want benches and we want walking paths and we want someplace to drive our ATVs. But hardly anybody ever asks for grassland. So whenever you get a questionnaire asking, how do you want this land to be used? Ask for grasslands. You can install, there are many opportunities to install artificial burrows. Cats are amazingly efficient predators. So the program called Cats Indoors, Dogs on Leash. As I said, when you're driving on county roads, go slow, especially at dawn and dusk. What can I do? Ask a landowner. This landowner actually moved where he intended to have his driveway because a occupied burrow was there where he had planned to put his driveway, and there's the owl right there on top of the sign. So landowners will let you sometime install artificial burrows, and this is a valley irrigation box. And some of the landowners have equipment. So this was the easiest artificial burrow I ever installed. This landowner had a backhoe. We have now HCP, NCCP in Yolo County, the Habitat Conservation Plan and Natural Communities Conservation Plan. So this has been approved. And so this is the way this works is landowners voluntarily will sell a conservation easement. And so we're looking, so if you know someone who's has property hosting burrowing owls, if you would refer them here, and then looks like they have some job announcements too. So maybe some of you would be able to get a job there. And this, and some of the HCP and CCPs do not cover. They get to decide which species are covered. And so for Yolo habitat, the burrowing owl is covered, and the species target is 2 pair. Currently, it has no conservation easements on occupied habitat. Do you want to quit?
You can ask if they want to ask questions.
Is it an hour?
No, it's close. You got 5 minutes or so if you have a little more you want to say.
Okay. Another thing that you can do is monitor. So places that you know or places that you find that you see burrowing owls. One of our people went by here and saw that this company drilling this well had put their staging, their equipment and materials very near to an occupied burrow. This wonderful guy, Rick Williams, he was monitoring in the winter migrant season, and he noticed a place where he often saw a burrowing owl. And so by a long and winding road, we got artificial burrows installed there. So that's me being the hand shovel technician. And like I say, participating in the government, educate your legislators. So education helps a great deal. And then banding, when you're out birding, please look at the legs. Often you can't see their legs because they're kind of squashed down. I was so happy that Robert Bateman painted the Canadians green over black band in his fabulous burrowing owl painting. So you can usually see the A-crafts with your binoculars. You can't usually see the federal band unless you've got the bird in your hand or you got a really good spotting scope. Do you want me to carry on? The burrowing owl is a migratory bird. Our breeding season in Northern California is February to September, and then they disperse. So where do our burrowing owls go? They go to Domino's Pizza. So a burrowing owl was banded in July at Wild Horse Golf Course, Christina Buss, and it was found, went from Wild Horse Golf Course to Lompoc, and was found in October behind this rock, behind the Domino's Pizza. So the Domino's Pizza manager called Fish and Game. Fish and Game called the rehabber. The rehabber said, "Oh yeah, he's skinny." So she plumped him up and she released him at Vandenberg Air Force Base. So when you can report the bands, it's the bird banding laboratory. The form's really easy to fill out. And this is the website, reportband.gov. You make banders very happy. We don't want to talk about that. And so this is our website. So we're a 501c3 and your donations are tax deductible and nobody loves your money as much as we do.
So you want to ask for questions?
Yeah.
All right, I'm going to stop the share. Look at that. Okay. And let's see. We have our chat here. Looks like we have a few comments that have come in. I know, Billy, you were kind of monitoring them too, so feel free to jump in if you would like to. I'm going to see if I can get my speaker set different. So give me just a sec here. And let's see if I can hear you on the computer. So,
Right.
yeah, okay, good. So now Catherine's going to be able to hear. If you want to go ahead, Billy, since you've been monitoring them, you want to read the question for Catherine and then she can.
Sure. So I'm going to go in order of when we first received the questions. So some of these are from earlier in the presentation. Robin asks, why are burrowing owls the highest mortality rate at Altamont?
They weren't sure, but Sean Smallwood thought somehow the cattle seemed to congregate around the bases of the power towers. And so the vegetation was shorter there. And so they thought maybe that was it.
Okay. Joellen asks, at the Marriott site, is there any evidence that owls are still in the neighborhood? I used to see them a lot there before the hotel went up.
No.
Okay. Roxanne asks, would statewide designation of burrowing owls as threatened improve this interagency handoff nightmare? Would it create stronger methods and procedures?
I don't know, especially for areas that have HCP and CCPs. When the wildlife agencies approve those, they get like 50 or 75 year take permits. and they're told when they go into this conservation plan that if the critter gets listed, that it won't change their practice. So I'm actually not sure how it would change.
Okay. Anne asks, what's the minimum viable acreage required to support the owls?
That is a huge range. Some of the researchers I saw said it's like 400 acres, and it depends on the habitat too. Like if it's a rich, prey habitat, then they wouldn't have to go as far to find enough food. So some of the researchers said it was like 400 acres, and some said it was like 700 acres. So it's a huge variance.
All right. Rachel asks, are there constructive lessons to be learned from how other states/governments are protecting burrowing owls?
There are. The only example I know actually is Florida. So the Fish and Game in Florida, they encourage homeowners to have their landscaping so it's hospitable for burrowing owls. So you can go on YouTube and find videos of the people coming out of their house, and the burrowing owls are right there in their lawn. So yes, kind of like they do with the desert. Some people in Southern California have a desert tortoise in their backyard. So yes, there are.
Great. Okay. Kathleen asks, what is a good goal for a healthy population on a 14-acre parcel of grassland?
I'm the wrong person to ask that question. I would say as many as possible, as many as that can sustain, how much food they have, or, what the predation pressure is.
Great. Max asks, is there any plans for relocation of burrowing owls from outside Yolo County to Yolo County?
We call those translocations, and they're Fish and Game CDFW is not keen on that idea. One of the things is that they make the conditions so burdensome that it's really hard to do. So they want land protected in perpetuity. They want a research study. They want an endowment. They want your habitat management plan and monitoring. So, most just, friendly people with some land who would be happy to have burrowing owls can't do that. And so they make it very difficult. And also looking at the research, I haven't looked at all of them, but the ones that I looked at, for one thing, N is very small. So like you saw in Lynn Trulio's study, N was 6. So there's not a lot of burrowing owls involved in the study, and they do it all differently. So there's not the same method. So you can't say, okay, here are 5 translocation studies done all the same way, and there's 100 owls we did this for, and it didn't work. So you can't say that. So you can't say it didn't work, but that's what CDFW says, that translocations don't work. My opinion is we just haven't found the right method yet, because it's not being consistently done the same method each time.
Marjorie asks, can pressure be put on City of Davis to increase habitat on open space in Davis like the ag buffers?
I welcome you. I've been doing it for 25 years. I'm happy if you want to come and help me.
All right. Floyd says, at the beginning, you said something about owls at dusk and dawn. Can you please go over that again?
Yeah, that's it's called crepuscular. They're most active at dawn and dusk. So like and in fact, the survey protocol, the Institute for Bird Populations survey protocol is you survey from dawn till 10, and then from 4 till dark, till dusk. So that's when they're most active. Although during the breeding time, when their offspring are out, come out there, you can, they're trying to feed their kids. So they're out, you can see them busy all day.
Okay, and here's our final question, unless any more slide in at the last minute. Roxanne asks, have burrowing owls always been rare?
No. Do you read the petition? Somebody wants to message me, you read the petition. One of the first documentations of them in the 1800s was they saw a burrowing owl on every little nook and hill. So no, there have been more abundant in the past.
Okay, we did get one more question from Monica. How do you keep hope alive?
I don't. I don't. I suffer greatly. Oh, I often wish that I had chosen to collect shoes and handbags for a hobby.
All right. Well, that's the end of our questions.
All right, I'm going to steal back the computer here. And before we wrap our evening, I want to make sure everybody knows that next month we are going to be having a presenter discussing the little predator that could, the river otter. And that's going to be with Megan Isidore from the River Otter Ecology Project. So keep us on your calendar, watch our newsletter, and hopefully you'll join us next time. So thanks for coming this evening. Sorry for some of our technical issues. I will edit and scoop out some of our biggest blips, and we'll be letting you know when that recording is done.